Welcome to Business Talks with your host, Ryan McNeice. Join Ryan now as he sits down with business and community leaders to discuss a wide range of important topics. Business Talks is brought to you in part by STCU, CW Crates and Pallets, and O'Brien Logistics. Now, here's your host, Ryan McNeice.
Welcome to Business Talks. I'm Ryan McNeice, and we're here in the studio with Laura Little.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Laura, producer, director, executive director. There's a lot we could talk about, but Laura Little Theatrical Productions is the name of your business.
Yes.
And I think as a starting place, you're a producer. And I think what's so exciting to have you here to talk about is Broadway, off-Broadway, regional theater, the artistic elements of theater, but really the business of theater. And that excited me to have an opportunity to chat with you about that. First off, what is a producer?
That's a great question because a lot of people just don't know what a producer does. So a producer picks the show, finds a show somehow, figures out a way to get it to whatever location they want to produce it at, whether it's a community theater or it's a regional theater or professional theater, Broadway, off-Broadway. And you put your team together. You hire your director, your musical director, your choreographer. You hire a general manager if you're going to do it in New York. That's somebody who will put all the pieces of the puzzle together for you. Obviously, at a regional theater or a community theater, you can't afford to do that. A producer would
have that many pieces of the puzzle.
Would deal with all of that. But they're the visionary for the show. And then they collaborate with the director on what that show is going to look like on stage, or they give the director complete reins and let them control the total look of the show. It depends on what they work out together.
Yeah, it probably depends on the personality of the producer and director of where those responsibilities cross over.
Correct, absolutely. And then raising capital.
Yeah,
fundraising. Whether like traditions of Christmas, I pay for myself. When I take a show to New York, I raise capital. I put my own money into it, and then I raise money as well. So funding the project is a huge aspect of what a producer does.
Well, and Laura, I think that's an aspect we've talked about even off camera, that there's not many businesses or endeavors out there that don't have the fundraising financial aspect to it. And oftentimes, I think the imagery or the appeal of any respective business, my background is in business and law, it takes financing. Bigger cases, it costs a lot to produce either cases or move the system forward. It doesn't appear that it's any different in the art world or more specifically the theater world.
Absolutely. Theater costs so much money. People don't realize a lot of people have no idea that you have to pay for scripts. You have to pay the royalties.
Licensing rights.
Licensing rights for the show. And a professional theater like Coeur d'Alene Summer Theater could pay upwards of $21,000 just to do a show for 3 weekends. That's a lot of tickets you have to sell just to pay for the royalties.
Right. And you're looking at how many people are coming through the door in that 3-week period. Does it even pay back that, let alone actors?
That's right, and costumes and box office staff and whatnot. So it's very expensive to produce professional theater. Community theaters pay a lower percentage of royalties, quite a bit lower than professional, but that's how you constitute a professional theater versus a community theater. So if you're paying professional royalties for the show, like Coeur d'Alene Summer Theater does, right now they're the only ones in the community that are paying professional royalties. So technically, they're the only professional theater in town.
By definition.
By definition, and they pay their actors. So
I want to go back and understand how you got in this business to begin with. But I do want to throw out a couple of your current producing credits. One is All Is Calm.
Yes.
And that's off-Broadway, and we'll go back to a couple of these, but also co-producing on Broadway, Come From Away, Peter and the Starcatcher, and Peter and the Starcatcher has won 5 Tony Awards.
Yes.
Come From Away is Tony Award winner and currently on Broadway, and then First Date. So we're talking about big productions. As you and I were indicating, All Is Calm is a phenomenal show. Tell me a little bit about that show, and then how you got into this business. And then I would like to figure out, how does a show like All Is Calm, how do you get that to Broadway or off-Broadway?
Right. All Is Calm I saw here, as you did, a handful of years ago, and fell in love with it. And just wanted to do some research on it. So I contacted George Green, and he told me a guy named Peter Rothstein wrote it out of Minneapolis. And lo and behold, I knew Peter from theater conferences I would go to in New York. So I contacted him and decided to meet him, and we flew to New York and had a meeting, and I said, I would love to produce this in New York. And he said, let's do it. And it took about 3 years to figure out the trajectory of it, because the show's been around for a long time, and they tour it, and they do it in Minneapolis, so it gets really complicated. Do you pull the tour while you're in New York, or do you...
does that pull from the marketing opportunities?
Absolutely,
right.
But we decided it does not. As long as you can control where they're being produced and the quality is going to be good, if they're doing it in Texas and the quality is really high, those people are going to spread the word for you,
right,
as long as it's not a competing audience.
No, I would agree with that. It might be somebody in Texas that I'm not going to go to New York anyway.
Right.
But if they're talking about it and talking to people that say, I am going to New York this Christmas,
right.
I'm going to go check it out.
I got the show you should see.
Right.
Absolutely, and that worked in our favor in many cases. So, but it took a while to work out all those details and legal fees and dealing with, entertainment lawyers out of New York. But we got it all settled, and a theater just happened to be open and want it really badly. It's really hard to get a theater in New York.
That's what I was going to ask. How do you even go about, if anyone is, as you are, and I am aware of when you're walking around Broadway or off-Broadway, I mean, yes, there's not as many theaters as one would think.
Right, no.
How do you figure out what's available and not available?
Well, a friend of mine gave me a lead on a theater, and I contacted them, and they said, we love the sound of it, send us information, and they said, we want it. We'll give you a time slot this year, next year. That is just rare. It was just a meant-to-be type of thing. That just does not happen, and so the Sheen Center, welcomed us, and they happened to have apartments above the theater, so they gave us apartments. So just everything worked in our favor.
Which housing alone, for that time period,
that was a huge cost for this show, because we couldn't put every actor there, but it certainly helped. And I had to go out the whole time, and the actors got these great apartments. I had to jump from hotel to hotel, whatever one had a good deal that week.
Surfing at the time, right?
And luckily I'm a member of the Spokane Club, so I could use reciprocal clubs in New York, and at times that was very cost effective.
So that worked out pretty well?
Yeah.
That's neat. So once you found, going back, you found the writer, which that was an interesting connection and degrees of separation. But then licensing rights, then finding a theater that's available. Then what?
Then they started with the casting, and then I started raising capital for it. So typically to bring a musical off-Broadway is about a $2 million project. We were able to do it for $650,000 because I acted as the general manager, because I hotel hopped, because I brought friends with me to work backstage in costuming.
You kept your costs down.
We kept the costs down. I played businesswoman as well as an advocate for the show. I hired the best marketing team, but I negotiated prices with them as opposed to just taking everything at face value. And
if I could, predominantly, whether it's the marketing team or the staffing behind the stage, if you will, do you generally bring folks in from other areas or predominantly in New York?
Prominently in New York, because it was a union show.
Right.
So we had to have a union stage manager, a union ASM, but I was able to bring some help for costuming with me, and they acted as a company manager too, so to deal with all the actors' problems, and then we just shared a room, so we split those costs. That's what I did, but I really wanted to see the show successful, and
and you knew how to make decisions to keep those costs down.
Exactly.
And some of those important decisions, I'm sure, artistically, are hey, is this a cost, a line item that if I reduce it, it's going to reduce the quality of the show, or you're not going to miss it in the quality of the show?
We put our money into lights
Right.
and mics.
Which you're
So-
going to see on stage.
Right, which affects the show dramatically, and marketing. We needed a great marketing team and press agent. So
And how is that done in New York with the marketing? How do you really get the word out that All Is Calm, for example, that we're talking about, All Is Calm is going to be in this theater, opening on this date, and doing a run of this particular time? How do you really get the word out
you
in
have
mass?
to do everything. You have to put money into print. You have to have billboards. You have to be in the subways.
Yeah.
Your social media specialist has to be on point. And I used a company called Pico, and they did Dear Evan Hansen.
Right.
They did Hello Dolly. So they know what they're doing.
I was going to say, some massive success there with both those.
So they were really able to guide me on, with the amount of money we had, where is the best place to put it. And I don't feel like we wasted a penny.
So really bang for your buck. Here's the engagement that you can create for this type of budget.
Correct.
So probably, give or take, next on the list is who's going to be in the show.
Who's going to be in the show?
Casting, how does that work? Who do you reach out to?
So in that particular case, we had, and this is pretty rare, that the show has been running, so they've had some cast members in it all 10 years that they've been performing at Minneapolis. So he had his go-to people.
You could pull some of those folks.
And then we used a couple people from New York that came recommended. To do that show really well, you have to have incredible basses, that can
Right.
sweep the floor with their voices. So we snagged one from New York and one from Minneapolis, and that was all the musical director and the director who did that. I didn't have anything to do with casting.
Well, I've always been fascinated with, no matter what the endeavor is, these people that are at the top of their game, whether you're talking about professional sports, professional theater, an oil painter, or professional racing. I think some individuals don't really understand how good these people are at what they do. You often hear at the cocktail party, I bet I could do this,
Right.
that, or another thing.
And you're like,
No,
not
and I've
this.
always enjoyed, actually, personally, kind of putting yourself in some of these situations and realizing they're off the charts.
They're off the charts because the show is a cappella.
Yeah.
And so if somebody comes in on a wrong note, you have to know how to adjust so it doesn't throw the
Let
rest
them
of the show off.
stay there and then come in
Right,
later.
and fix it. Right, you fix it for them, and or you just don't come in on the wrong note. You
Right.
have to really be concentrating. And then there's so much going on stage. These guys said that if humans understood how much concentration it was to come in on the right note when you don't have a pitch pipe or you don't have a piano in the background.
For that
And people
tempo.
are saying lines. There's conversations going on while you're trying to
Right.
come in, that it's a really difficult art form.
And hearing you say that, I would hope that people that are having the opportunity to hear this would check out All Is Calm, because what you're saying, the magnitude of that there isn't the music behind it
Right.
regarding that tempo, and I think that is so important. That how many individuals are on stage in All Is Calm?
Well, you can do it a variety of
Yeah.
different ways, but 10.
Yeah, and they are all bringing in a different narrative. It's actually incredible.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But just the story in itself about the Christmas truce, laying down arms and celebrating Christmas together in World War I. Wow, what a great message.
And then to turn right around and start fighting again.
And they didn't want to.
It's
but
incredible.
They,
And you're sitting there and saying, why?
right.
Why? I mean, it's powerful. It's a powerful, powerful story. It really is.
I'm glad you recognize that. Thank you.
No, it is. Let's take a short break and come right back and talk about the trajectory and the business of theater in terms of bringing a show to the stage.
The following is sponsored by our friends and community supporters at McNeice Wheeler Attorneys. McNeice Wheeler is a boutique law firm in Spokane, handling matters in both Washington and Idaho. Areas of law include business law, wills, trusts and estates, family law, personal injury and wrongful death, and real estate matters. For your full-service legal needs, contact McNeice Wheeler Attorneys.
I'm Nikki Butler, and I'm a regional manager for STCU. My lunch buddy is Nicole.
I'm Brandy Schloss. I'm a regional manager at STCU. My lunch buddy is Angelina. She's grown up with me. I've grown up with her. To see her graduate will be a lot of fun.
Brandy and I have been lunch buddies since the girls were in second grade. It's great that STCU provides me with the opportunity to be part of Reach for the Future. We are committed to the children. We're committed to our community. I'm Nikki.
I'm Brandy.
And STCU is here for good.
O'Brien Logistics would like to invite you to try our local and regional transportation services. With Sprinter vans, lift gates, hot shot flatbeds, and expedited services, our people are ready to step in and help with your transportation needs. Our services are 24/7, 365, and we are trained and prepared to handle air cargo and Canadian shipments. Give us a call at 208-305-2311 or visit our website at o'brienlogistics.net. That's OBRIEN logistics.net.
Welcome back to Business Talks. We're here in the studio with Laura Little, chatting about the trajectory of bringing theater to the stage and really the concept of it's a business, which isn't taking away from the art form of it either. It's just the other end of it.
Absolutely.
If you want to be in art, you got to at least have a head for the business side of it. Right before the break, we were talking about casting. How do you go about being good at casting? We hear casting directors, et cetera, but, casting calls, and you could go out and grab the first 10 individuals, I suppose. How does a casting director or the producer figure out who's a fit for this show?
Yeah, well, for this show in particular, a lot of it is audio.
Mm-hmm.
Can that person hold the right pitch? Can they harmonize? They have to harmonize like crazy, more than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, casting, for me, when I cast, which I love, what's one of my favorite things in the world to do is cast.
Of the different hats that you wear,
Yes,
as a
of the
producer, the casting,
Mhm.
yeah.
I love to be involved in casting, and a lot of times you hear something and somebody's got to be very natural in the way they deliver their lines. For me, can't be forced, but if somebody gives me a chill or can make me laugh, they touch me in some way, I know they're the right person for what we're looking for.
It changes the dial, like you've been moved to a certain extent, or is it just nothing?
Yeah, and it's really important to cast fairly, like to cast blindly, not because it's your friend or your cousin, or that you put the best person in for the part no matter what. And sometimes that's not always done.
I was just going to say that's actually a pretty important critical piece, because I think that probably is a constant tug of war,
especially
because
in a
of money
smaller
involved.
Especially in a smaller community. You run into these people all the time. You develop friendships with people, but if they're not right for the part, please don't put them in.
Well, at the end of the day, it's probably not good for the individual that may have been miscast. It probably won't be a good experience.
Right. If other producers or directors are in the audience and they see them miscast, it's a lot harder to accept them in your mind in the right part, because you saw them in the wrong part.
So casting, you get the right people in the part. Rehearsals. On Broadway or off-Broadway, what is usually the time period of an actual rehearsal? Once you've assembled the cast and say, here's the show we're going to do.
Yeah, it really depends on the show. It could be a 6-week rehearsal process. It could be a 2-month rehearsal process. All is calm because most of these guys had worked together already. It was more like a 2 or 3 week rehearsal process.
And some were familiar with the show anyway because of Minneapolis.
Yes, exactly. All of them were except for 2. So I know theaters around here will sometimes do a 5-week rehearsal process. Sometimes they'll do a 3-week rehearsal process.
I'm always shocked at that. I mean, when you look at the scripts of many of these shows, it's just phenomenal that they can put that together in that short of a time.
Right. And it just depends on if they're rehearsing just at nights, or the professional theaters can usually get people to rehearse all day, 5 days a week for for 2 to 3 weeks prior to going on, because people leave their day jobs.
And I would imagine most people would think that you rehearse on the stage, but my understanding, if it's off-Broadway or Broadway, the expense of the stage in of itself, you're not there but for maybe the very end.
Right. Even here, unless you, like the Civic has the luxury of rehearsing on stage probably longer, I'm guessing, than, but I would imagine they have rehearsal rooms too. I think they do. My daughter's performed there many times, but it was years ago. But yeah, in New York, your rehearsal space, and that's one of the reasons why we rehearsed in Minneapolis, because we had free rehearsal space. So I flew the 2 guys from New York to Minneapolis, and it was a lot cheaper. It was $250 a flight, as opposed to $250 an hour for rehearsal space.
See, you're speaking my language, though, because I love this, again, this concept that you're making decisions throughout the entire production to keep the cost down, to still put on a great show.
Yeah.
It's exciting. I think that's probably what excites you, or one of the pieces that excites you about being the producer, is being in charge of these pieces to make the whole thing come together.
Make it work. Yep.
So opening night, what was opening night for All Is Calm?
It was November 18th.
November 18th.
Yeah, it was great.
What was that like, seeing it all come together?
Seeing it, I had all my family there, and my parents were involved in the arts, and not for career, but they were just involved in the arts, and they had tears in their eyes. I have one in my eye, but it's only because I have dry eye right now.
We're getting emotional here.
I'm getting, and it was really special to have them there, see this, because it's been my dream to be a lead producer in New York, so my dream came true, on November 18th. And
when that curtain rolled back or up, you had to be thinking, okay, this is pretty cool. I did this.
This is the pinnacle. People said, okay, you've won Tony Awards, you've hit the pinnacle. And I'm like, no, I never went into this to win awards. I went in this to learn to be a lead producer in New York.
To be able to do that.
And so that was my pinnacle.
Well, and I think a piece of your story has to be, and again, we could probably chat for hours and will, but you choose to live in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Right.
Tell me about that. Again, the pinnacle of, or at least symbolically, the pinnacle of this type of profession in theater is the word Broadway, right?
Right.
And yet there's amazing theater all over the country and all over the world, regional, et cetera. But Broadway, off-Broadway is the phrase everybody knows. Why live in Coeur d'Alene?
Oh, I like the peace and quiet. I love to kayak and paddleboard when I have my downtime. That's where I want to be. I have energy when I go to New York, but I'm also exhausted at the end of it.
Yeah, you're surfing the hotels, and as you said,
the hotels, and just to go to a meeting, you Uber, and then you're walking in heels, or you have to change your shoes. It's a lot of energy. But this is where I get my peace. Yeah. So my friends are here.
No, I would agree with you, though. I think the words you've used are spot on, though. The energy of Manhattan is unreal and unlike anything else. But our area is amazing.
It's amazing.
And we do have, would you agree, in the profession you're in, the artistic ability and theater ability here in our region is pretty amazing as well.
It's incredible. That's one of the reasons why I moved here from San Diego. We had so much theater here, so I knew there would be work. And that was about 15 years ago. So I knew I could do something in the arts here, and it just keeps growing.
What's your next project?
Well, I thought I was going to take this year off, but All Is Calm is going to be filmed next year in Minneapolis. They're sending our crew in to film our off-Broadway cast, and it's going to play hopefully on PBS every year for
That's fantastic.
So I'm learning the ropes of doing that.
I think it will. I mean, I think when I think of holiday classics, I don't know if the word cult classic is correct, but in terms of something with a major passionate following, I think this one will be that if it's on PBS yearly.
From your lips, right?
Yeah, right. I think it will be.
And then Traditions of Christmas is just a huge love project for me. I love that show. It's like a Radio City Music Hall style show with 70 people in it, and Kickline and Dickens and A Living Nativity, and everything to do with Christmas. I have a huge U.S. military tribute. My dad was a career Marine and also a singer. But It's really
That's
special
awesome.
to my heart, and I'm going to do that as long as community buys the tickets for it. But it's a big project, and when I'm not here, I can't work on it as
Right.
much. And I love being involved. I love casting.
You like
it,
the
and
hands-on?
I love the hands-on.
Well, and that's, again, I respect that because I use the word general contractor a lot in the legal world, and I think that's similar to producing, and that to be a general contractor and be good at it, you need to put together the expertise and the right pieces for any endeavor, and I think that's what you're doing.
That's what I love to do.
Yeah.
I feel very fortunate I can do what I love.
So the Traditions of Christmas, is that will be at the Kroc Center, though?
Yes.
That's a great facility.
Yeah, we're really lucky to have it. Wish it had a few more seats in it, but
Yeah. What is it? I mean,
it's 400.
Is it 400?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ideally, it would have been great if it was 500 or 600 because so many people need that number.
Right.
But we take what we can get.
Right.
Right.
It is a beautiful facility.
Yes, it
but
is.
Laura, thank you so much.
bet.
I'd love to keep talking to you, and we will. We'll have to further kind of dissect again this trajectory of the critical aspects of bringing theater and the behind the scenes of how you get the shows that people know and love over the years, but what it takes to actually get it there. That
Right.
there's a lot back here to even get to what people see.
Absolutely.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for joining me.
You bet. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Have a good
Thanks
day.
for watching. Business Talks is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksMedia.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Business Talks is brought to you in part by STCU, CW Crates and Pallets, and O'Brien Logistics. Ask Ryan a question, recommend a guest, or hear this program again on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SpokaneTalksMedia.com.